Okay, welcome everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome you to this evening's webinar as part of the Scotland-Malawi Partnership Youth Festival. Tonight's webinar is Young Voices on Race and Equality with Ryan and Josephine. This is an incredibly special event, bringing together young voices and professional opinions on the issues of race and equality and the differences in the issues in race and equality that we might face in our countries of Scotland and Malawi. If you have listened to the podcast in advance, you'll recognise some of the stories and some of the voices from that, but we're going to widen it out to many more experts this evening and introduce other opinions. We have got the David Livingstone Trust, and we've got two representatives from there. And we have a whole host of interesting presenters tonight via recorded video and live presentations. Okay, so without further ado, I will pass on to the lovely Josephine of the Ryan and Josephine duo, and I'll let her kick things off tonight. Go ahead, Josephine.
So my name is Josephine. I'm happy to have everyone here. I am joined by a lot of people on the panel, as you can see, but my co-host is Ryan. So Ryan will also say hi now.
Hi, my name is Ryan, and I've been to Malawi twice so far and been a member of the youth committee since it basically started 2 years ago.
I am currently a student at Edinburgh, so I am in Scotland right now, and I'm here to share you my experiences from being a Malawian in Scotland. So I think I will move over to Ryan, who will ask each one of our panelists to introduce themselves before we dive straight into conversations.
We've got two members from the David Livingstone Trust who we've worked with quite a few times before. So I'll pass over to Elena first.
Evening, everyone. Thanks so much for inviting us along to this session. Just a bit of an intro from me. I'm the Learning and Engagement Manager at the David Livingstone Birthplace. And as Ryan said, we've worked closely with the Scotland-Malawi Partnership before. We're at a really exciting stage of the organisation of the museum that both Rosa and I work for.
I'm Rosa. I'm the Learning Officer at the Birthplace Project. As Eleanor said, the Birthplace Project is, we're kind of recalibrating the way that we work with the collection and also with the learning teams.
Then next we've got Kirsten, who, well, she's going to do a little intro for us in presentation.
Thanks so much, Ryan and Josephine. So my name is Kirsten Leask and I work for Learning for Sustainability Scotland, which is one of the organisations that co-delivers the Connecting Classrooms through Global Learning programme on behalf of the British Council and the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share more about. So what are we all about? I guess I'd like to take a little bit of a step back in terms of the huge challenges that our world faces. We're looking at inequality of all kinds, climate change, political upheaval, the nature crisis, and obviously very much in the limelight at the moment, the global health issues that we're facing. We're very privileged to live on this beautiful planet, but issues of inequality are everywhere, whether they're to do with race or gender or poverty or anything else. And really the only way that we're going to truly tackle them is to work together. And that's what CCGL is all about. It's about bringing people together locally, nationally, and internationally to share and learn about these issues and collaborate with each other to build truly equitable and appropriate and inclusive solutions. So educational settings of all kinds, I know it says school on the graphic, but educational settings of all kinds and for all ages are at the heart of communities across the world. Everybody will no doubt be aware of the Sustainable Development Goals, that international vision for building a better world socially, culturally, economically and ecologically by 2030. And it's a fantastic vision, but it isn't going to happen unless citizens across the world are enabled with the values, the skills, the knowledge and the confidence to take the action that we need. And this is where local, national, international partnerships between educators and learners have such a powerful part to play. Because it's only by engaging with each other and getting to know each other and appreciating that we can all learn from each other that we'll make that progress towards eradicating inequality of all kinds and those other big challenges that we face. But we need to change the way that we collaborate with each other, challenging stereotypes both here in different parts of Scotland as well as with people in other countries, and realise that there's far more that connects us as humans than separates us. So part of the work that we do is to work with educators as well as learners, creating and nurturing those equitable opportunities for understanding and realizing that education is so much more than just acquiring lots of knowledge. If we're going to make a difference, we need to be able to share and understand and critically evaluate different points of view and values and build the skills and confidence that we need to work together. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present to you tonight.
Thank you so much, Kristen. That was amazing. And definitely something to think about. What is wealth? I've never thought about it in that angle. To be honest, I do look at it as, monetary value, monetary reflections. That's the only way I've ever thought of wealth. I guess wealth can also mean being happy, being in that happy space, being free. So I guess free in this sense would be, like you say, being in a place where we're equal and we respect each other, and we are not looking at race as the first thing that comes into your mind when you meet a different person, but rather you're feeling comfortable and you're free to look at that person as a person, not by their race.
I mean, it's an interesting point, the question around wealth, and also Kristen mentioned what it means to be successful, for example. So I suppose the thing that springs to my mind in the work that we do is around knowledge and wealth of knowledge and how information is shared and what information is shared. So I don't really, I suppose, that's just something that we've been thinking about, just to make sure that the wealth of information that we hold as a museum is kind of shared and is accessible as best as we can.
I think it's like both Ryan and Josephine make an interesting point about, well, it's interesting that you both immediately were like, oh, well, wealth is like money. And I think that's what we all think. And, I think that's the world that we live in. So it's about moving to a world where we do consider other forms of wealth as valuable, but not to forget that we still do live in that world where wealth is important. So we do need to still think about that.
Looking at our schedule, Ryan, we're supposed to be slotting in Stecker skills right now. So we will continue the discussions after also having an input from Stecker skills.
Hello, I'm Emma Wood, and I'm speaking to you as someone who has worked very closely to co-produce a new approach to young people connecting from Malawi and Scotland, and to just share some insights that I have gained as a result of that. And you will then hear from Abigail Maseko in a minute. One of the things we absolutely have to recognise right up front is the inequality between people in Malawi and people in Scotland. We've got to think about race, and we've got to factor that into the way in which we interact together, how we attempt to reduce the equality gap. And there's a whole range of books at the moment, some of which are here, that help us to think about that in particular ways. And I think one of them I've had to address is this idea of white fragility. The fact that certainly many young people I've spoken to, white young people from Scotland, will feel annoyed that they are being accused of being racist, or that assumption might be made about them, and feel very strongly that they're not. And I think this quote here about, it isn't about the sharks, it's not about you as an individual or me as an individual being racist, it's about the water that we swim in. That's where the inequalities are. That's where the story, the narrative that we have is that we are developed. We are from a developed country, and our role is to help more helpless people to develop like us, undeveloped people to develop like us. And that narrative is quite difficult to stand up against unless you are made aware of it. So it's around challenging the water that we swim in, about recognizing what white privilege is and how we can accept that and take that on board without losing our humanity. And this quote at the top, I think, is really important. We can't be too afraid to work together. we need to work together as human beings, and we need to humanize each other and the situation. What we're doing, however, is decolonizing. We are challenging the impact that came about because countries like ours colonized countries like Malawi. And therefore, it's not easy. And it's dirty, you know, it's disruptive. It has to be, you have to disrupt it. So we do have to head on address issues like race and inequality. And this guy at the bottom here, Freire, is this wonderful book, Pedagogy of the Oppressed. He has informed everything I have done in my relation to trying to address my own privilege and work with others in an empowering way. So we've done this big project. I'd like you to look at how this has worked in a co-produced approach that changes the way Scottish young people interact with young Malawians. And you probably won't have time to read these quotes, but if you click on the report, which is on the Stecker Skills website, you can read about how young Scots have had their lives changed. The way they go about their life has changed as a result of meeting and being inspired by young Malawians. So I'm now going to play a clip from a film that Abigail Maseko made. She's a resident of the wonderful Stecker care home in Malawi, and she talks about coming to Scotland. And I hope that it challenges all the assumptions you might have made about someone who is poverty experienced coming to Scotland and what that might mean for her.
The main reason that I came to Scotland was that I came to learn filmmaking so that when I went back home in Malawi, I should be making films about human trafficking, but I'm more interested to make films that can make girls' voices heard and they can get justice. When I lived there in South Africa, in the early days it was just fine, and I felt like life would be easy, but suddenly things changed. It was not the way I was promised, and terrible things started happening to me. I had nowhere to go by then, and it was very far from my family. After 3 years, then she took me back to Malawi. She dumped me in the street. I had no idea where I can go, but I just thought of going to the police, explain to them everything, what happened to me. Then they referred me to Stecker. I think of the white people coming to visit Stecker is that I always look at these people with a negative attitude, because I find it really hard up to now to understand why the past things happened to me like that. I changed my opinion about the white people coming to visit Stecker. I've seen that Emma, at first the time I met her, she was really interested to know me. I said I should come with her to Scotland. It was difficult for me to agree and to take it because I felt like I'm being trafficked again. If this is gonna happen again, then that's the end of my life. But I knew something was telling me that this is a different situation. I'm really different from how I was at first, the time I was just arriving at Stecker, because I wasn't really good in making friends, and I was just looking down on myself like I can do nothing, but maybe like my life is just shattered. But now I can see that I can make a difference because I have something to say. Now I feel courageous. I see myself being someone in future.
Much, Louisa, for that. And thank you to Steka Skills for chipping in with the lovely input. I think I'm going to let everyone digest the information because it's usually quite a lot to take in. There was a lot in there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, what a powerful video. I think definitely, and I think somebody said that in the chat, but definitely something to take away for me was how white people can be perceived, when they travel to a different country. I think there's maybe there's a feeling that you want to help people, but people don't necessarily see things that way. And I suppose, I suppose what we do at the Birthplace is trying to teach, what I'm interested in doing is teaching Scottish young people more about their history so that they know where they're coming from, so that they know why they might be perceived in that way. Do you know what I mean? Because certainly, like David Livingstone, for instance, like he obviously traveled to Africa to teach people about Christianity, but there's a lot of problematic. That's quite problematic in lots of ways, and kind of discussing that with Scottish young people to work out how you can offer help, or how you more like how you can work together to solve these problems, and recognizing where you're coming from, like historically and culturally, I think is important, so that you're not just trampling on other people's cultures, which is definitely a no-no.
Right, maybe looking at the time, I think it's best if we maybe show Mooty's video audio clip. If we could just jump ahead to hopefully that audio clip.
Am I a racist? I'm a black man, and by definition, I am not a racist. I can be prejudiced, I can be bigoted, but I can't be racist. That is what people have told me. But I was a latent racist. What is a latent racist? A latent racist is somebody who is a racist without realizing they are. And that's what I used to be until a couple of years ago when I realized my racism. In Malawi, the racism that most Malawians have, which we don't talk about, is racism to Asians. And the private school I went to had a lot of Asians there. So I had a lot of friends. And one of my friends was Tariq. And Tariq and I were really close. We used to play together. We used to joke around. We were friends, the way friends are. And then about 10 years after I left that private school, I met Tariq again in a bank. And he recognized me. And then when I looked, I said, "Hey, Tariq." And the funny thing was, I felt very uneasy around him. I shook his hand and I felt disgusted. And I didn't know why. This was someone I knew, my friend, someone I used to play around with, joke around with. Why all of a sudden am I uncomfortable around him? And I realized the 10 years when I was not around Asians, I didn't have any engagement with Asian friends after that. What was happening was that my mind was being imbued with all manner of stereotypes, all manner of little factoids that people said. Asians are stingy. Asians just love money. Asians do this, Asians do that. Those little things, which, by the way, I didn't agree with, were being imprinted in my subconscious without me realizing it. I was being marinated in racism without realizing that that was what was happening to me. So I was a latent racist. And how did I get over it? I was going to a shop. It was an Asian shop. I was buying some stuff. And usually the transaction ends with an exchange of money. And then I wanted to say thank you. But then I asked the Asian, how do you say thank you in your language? And I had the brightest smile. He was so surprised that I asked him. And he said, no Malawian has asked me that. And he told me, and don't ask me what he said because I don't remember. But what I do remember was the expression on his face. And since then, I make an effort to just be civil, to be a human being, to say hello, how are you doing? How's the family? I even have friends now who are Asians, and they invite me to their home to have dinner with their family. And that was what I had to do. It was not comfortable because I was combating the conditioning that was in my head. So can Black people be racist? Yes, they can. And sometimes you can be racist without realizing it, which is why you must constantly check yourself. What stereotype you are holding, what thought patterns you're holding, always question it and ask yourself, where did it come from? And work on being better, because that's the best thing we can do. Be better.
Thank you. So panelists, what do you think about that?
I think that's basically the perfect representation of what Emma Wood was saying about like it being the water. Like you might not realize that it's happening, because I mean, I feel, well, in my opinion, in Scotland, like most people wouldn't class themselves as a racist, but more the same sort of thing with prejudices, maybe about poorer areas, like in Scotland. You know, if you hear someone's from like Castlemilk or somewhere like this rough end of Glasgow or things like that, like you instantly like think, oh, they're from the rough end, they're going to, you know, might have a weapon or things like that. That it's just the reputation of that area is the first thing that comes to mind, where you don't realise it's really happening. And I feel as if that's like one of the main things that would happen in Scotland, not quite racism, but more just like prejudice in general that you might not realise you're having, because like racism is just like, you know, it's plastered everywhere here and you see it, like you sort of make an effort not to be, but like just the sort of small social aspects that you might not realise, you know, someone's background or their area, like just gets marinated into, like you said, like your subconscious, and you don't know what's happening until, you know, it's pointed out to you, and then you sort of realise and you can think about it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Elena, how do you guys at David Livingstone Trust go about sharing information without sounding racist?
That's a really good question. So we have, throughout the museum redevelopment, so we've been closed for a number of years now, we have worked closely with community groups. We have worked closely with partner organizations as well to help us review the text. And I suppose language is a really powerful tool. And so that's kind of the immediate thing that you go into the museum is objects and language. And so we have reviewed that language a multitude of times.
Yeah, totally. It makes a lot of sense. I think language is definitely one of the things that we have to be very cautious about. You never really know when and how you're offending the other person when you say something.
Yeah, I suppose just to add to, I mean, obviously I agree with Eleanor, that's why we work together. But just to add to what she said, I guess another thing as well as like constantly checking yourself and checking, I think, checking that the information that you receive, you know, questioning it, just always questioning, and even questioning the information that you have in your head, because you just never know. And like you say, you're marinated in all of this stuff. So it's, you know, it's really hard. You have to keep dissecting your own actions. But I think as well, one of the things that we try to do is not to just, you know, parrot the same voices, but to try and include different perspectives and different narratives, even, you know, from the past. Like previously, maybe we would just talk about David Livingstone and his story, but it's good to include other voices as well and other perspectives.
I think we're definitely over time, and we'd like to thank everyone for staying till the end. You've been amazing guests. You have also been amazing panelists. To everyone that has joined us, Rosa, Elena, Kristen, Louisa will definitely close for us by just sharing a few details, or else we hope to see you through the remaining Youth Festival activities.
Congratulations, Ryan and Josephine and the whole panel, David Livingstone Trust representatives from the Malawi Scotland Partnership. I'm so pleased to have been part of this discussion today. I really do hope that this discussion is just the start of something new. This is the very beginning, I think, of a new connection and the first kind of key point in the pathway for something really, really insightful going forward. So watch this space. So on behalf of all at SNP and of all the panelists tonight, we thank you, and I hope you continue to have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you next time.